You don't have to worry about that. I've given this exact rant many, many times. So I would assume chat's already well aware of how I feel about Christmas postcards from people. So anyway, it's not there yet. I think everything I talk about these days is just what I don't like. Like I never.
I feel like that's every broadcaster though. As time goes on, as you just get
Yeah,
curmudgeon-y because you've
I
seen
know.
all the things at that point.
I never talk about things I enjoy anymore. I promise. There's a lot of things in life I really enjoy. I'm genuinely a pretty happy person, but you wouldn't know it. You'd be like, this guy just goes around life finding things to hate. Like.
The joys and the unhappiness. That's like people with gambling sometimes. The joys and the losing, which it shouldn't be. But
That's a good point.
yeah.
There's something cathartic about just like being able to hate everything and then come in here and vent about it. And
Living
no
the
one
dream.
wants to hear it. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. I'm Dave Loughran. That's Chris Spags. And we got a fun game today. Baltimore 7.5 point road favorites against Miami. It's funny, dude, because I think this game's actually a little bit different than it would have been. Like, say this were week 8, right? And Miami never faced the Falcons. I'm not saying it should be different, but I'm saying perception, optics-wise, I do think it's a little bit different because Miami looked like the worst team in the league down there in the cellar with Tennessee, right? And then they go in and they smoke Atlanta. Granted, no Drake London. Kirk Cousins looks like he's total dust. I mean, that was terrible. They keyed in on Bijan Robinson, took him out of the game, and that was a great game plan. And they actually used a lot of 6 offensive linemen. But my point is, Spags, imagine if this game were following another, drubbing of the Miami Dolphins. It would definitely look a little bit different today.
I mean, look, it already looks incredibly highly owned for the Baltimore side, like you'd expect if Miami had been bad last week. But Atlanta's such a weird team, man. And I think you're right about the Kirk Cousins part. There were some people, I think, on like Reddit I had seen asking, like, well, what happened to Darnell Mooney last week? Like, he was supposed to be so good. And they somebody just posted a clip of Mooney being wide open 20 yards downfield, and the pass is just 15 yards above his head. And maybe he thought that Mooney was going to keep going, and Mooney settled in. That happens. It sometimes looks bad, but I agree. Like, the Dolphins had really good results last week. Even though, for this show and I think in general in DFS and betting, you're trying to not be focused on the results of one week and having to define things. For a casual Thursday night slate where a lot of action comes in, that's not necessarily the sharpest plays. It's also just a lot of people that, see it one way and don't want to think about any others. And I think for people out there, if you are just remembering that Miami is not a good defense, that might be enough to carry you a little bit further than it would in a normal week.
I think so too. Now, again, I'm not saying that's how we should look at it. I'm just saying I think people will look at Miami a little bit differently than they would have had they never faced Atlanta last week.
Yep.
But I'm not really buying it. Like, I was thinking about this. I have a fun play for you guys that's going to be up on Tails a little bit later. I'm going to post it immediately after this show, right? So if you're over there on Tails, stay tuned. I know many of you have notifications on, but I think maybe the most interesting spot in this game from a betting perspective, maybe not so much a DFS angle because he's just going to be popular regardless, but is Derrick Henry. And here's why. First of all, 11% owned a captain. He's actually getting less captain ownership than other spots. And I know, Spags, he's not cheap, so I'm not suggesting that like Derrick Henry is discounted. He's $11,000. But Miami comes in and they take out Bijan and Algier, whatever. But at the same time, like, this is a different team. There was no Zay Flowers. There was no Lamar Jackson, right? They have even guys like Bateman, Andrews, Likely. They have a lot of weapons on this offense. You can't just say, okay, take Derrick Henry out of the game and everything else will solve itself. If there's a chance here that last week was the Paper Tiger Bowl where you just saw like Atlanta get smoked, but then Miami proves to once again be the Paper Tiger after last week's big victory, and the run defense is still as bad as they were literally through the first 7 weeks of the season. This could just be a spot where 20 Derrick Henry carries turns into 200 yards.
I mean, look, I will say for Derrick Henry, I was really impressed by him last year. The fact that at his age, he came in, took a ton of volume, looked great in terms of the EPA metrics that I swear by, the expected points added stuff, where it's hard to be, plus EPA runner when you're taking on a high level of volume. He did that when he did get targeted in the pass game, looked good there. And the biggest thing, too, is that he was avoiding tackles at like a 20% rate, which is a lot for, power back at his age. This year, Derrick Henry looks awful. Like, I was looking at his numbers this morning and was like, God, he's just so bad. And if he were anybody else, I would go, like, why are we playing this guy? Why is he still on the field? He's got a negative 0.15 EPA per rush. That's the worst of any running back in this game. That includes the backups. That includes Ollie Gordon. That includes whoever. Negative 0.29, or actually negative 0.39 EPA per target. So when they are throwing the ball, he's not doing a lot there. His avoided tackle rate, though, is where it's really bad. Again, it was 20% last year. He's at 4.7% this year. So he just is not missing guys, and he's just falling down. And if you watch the games, like, he got decent results in the box score by the end of that game, but like, he does just fall down on first contact a lot now. And that's like, you're not getting what you pay for Derrick Henry. And he's so expensive at 11K on the slate that I would be hard pressed to not be with the field. Still think Miami's defense sucks, but my God, Derrick Henry is like awful. And I think we need to say it out loud that it might just kind of be done.
I'm not buying it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think he's the same Derrick Henry that he was in the past, but I mean, it was only like, it was literally less than 2 months ago that this guy went into Buffalo and had like 4 rushes of 30 plus yards. I don't know. And I understand all EPA per rush attempt and all of that, but you're playing with Cooper Rush, and like, I just still have a tough time looking at some of these spots against Kansas City where they were if Derrick Henry's in a favorable game script, I think all of that goes out the window, man. Like, also, don't you think there's something to be said about Derrick Henry where this guy lives on breakaway runs, right? Like, if he gets 2 breakaway runs against the Miami team that's allowed quite a bit of them this year, then nothing else really matters.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to Saquon. We saw how those results worked out.
That's a great comparison. Yeah.
So I'm with you conceptually. Like, I point out the stuff that I see, and again, he was a guy that even in best ball, I was like, man, not usually the archetype I like. There's guys around here like Devon Achane at the similar ADP, and I would take Henry over him a lot because I'm like, wow, this role is so good. But like, the role is not as great this year. He's still getting 3.1 red zone opportunities a game. That's not bad. Still wasn't as good as last year. He was about 5 a game, if I'm remembering correctly. A 1.7 inside the 10-yard line per game. Again, it's good. It's not as good as some of the other bell cows. Like, for Jonathan Taylor, you're talking twice as much. For Rashee Rice, you're talking twice as much. I think for Derrick Henry, I would just put the caveat out there that he's not the same guy. And, in your Cooper Rush thing, like, I think that's fair. Like, Rico Dowdle's a guy we're seeing go off this year. And what did he do last year? Kept putting up 100-yard games with Cooper Rush as his QB. So, like, I don't know. It's not as simple as that, obviously. But, like, why can't Derrick Henry do that? I don't know. Is he just a front runner at this point? Is he just a decimal back at this point? Like, you guys have coined so long ago. I
definitely think he's a decimal back. I would agree with that. I definitely think, but he's always kind of been a decimal back, right?
Yeah, like, elevated, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. But it's because, well, yes and no. Like, Derrick Henry, even in his prime, could have a game with 7 fantasy points because he just gets shut down. He has 70 rushing yards and does nothing else. But then he could follow it up with like 220 and 3 touchdowns. So yeah, elevated decimal back in the sense that, when he's on, he's on. But like, Miami's allowed double-digit rushing attempts of 20-plus yards this year. They've already allowed 4 rushing attempts of 40-plus yards. Like, I guess what I'm saying is, if there were a type of defense that kind of perfectly aligns with what Derrick Henry does, it feels like Miami. Similar to Buffalo, where Buffalo would just give up massive chunk plays. Like, they've allowed 8 of 20 plus, 3 of 40 plus. They might all be to Derrick Henry in week 1. But look, I totally get what you're saying. I'm not even arguing that Derrick Henry's on the decline. I'm simply arguing that I believe Derrick Henry still has the ability, now that Lamar is back there, to have one of those crazy games where you desperately need him to win. But he's also capable of having those games where you desperately need to not have him in order to win. But I think where we differ here is that it sounds like you're saying there may not be any more of those games where you need Henry to win.
I think at that price tag, I mean, I almost would prefer playing him at captain where you could capture the true upside there and then maybe fade him in the flex a little bit more. But look, I think it's highly likely he scores a touchdown. I haven't checked the markets this morning for that. For his anytime TD, I presume it might even be minus money on that. I get it. I would just, and I agree too, the matchup too. Like, Miami's missing a lot of tackles. They missed 12% of the tackles they're going against. It's a really high rate. So if anybody's going to get kind of Derrick Henry to get a little more juice in his bones, that could be it. There's also this one thing that stuck with me at the beginning of the year when Henry started playing bad. It got served up my YouTube algorithm, a video of Henry working out, and he was like running hills with like elastic bands on him. And he just looks slow. And I was like, it's weird that he looks slow here. And now I'm watching every game and it's like, he just looks a little slow. And, that happens when you have a million miles on your tires. But if any spot's going to keep him looking like the old Derrick Henry and me being wrong for another week, this is probably the spot. I got to say it out loud. I feel like he just doesn't look like the guy anymore.
I'm glad you do, man. I wouldn't want you to lie to us.
Thank you.
Well, yeah.
It takes true courage, right, Loughy? That's
yeah,
what we say.
I like that. Was it the gravel hill? Was it those gravel hills by any chance? Because that's Marlon Humphrey's thing. Marlon Humphrey was a big gravel hill guy.
No, it was a big grass hill, by a highway or something.
Okay.
But it was a video with him with his trainers or whatever. And he's working hard out there. He's sweating, but I'm I couldn't just stop thinking he looks real slow running up this hill. It's off-season training. I don't know, but he looked slow running up the hill.
By the way, minus 250 to score on FanDuel.
Oh man. All right. Well, doesn't mean it makes a winning lineup, but
no, it doesn't. No,
yeah.
At 90-yard rushing prop. So I think if Miami didn't have that game last week, Derrick Henry's rushing prop is over 100. I really do.
It's plausible.
But we'll see. It is a short week for him. He did get another 20 or whatever carries last week. But all right, I just wanted to start off on Henry because, now that Lamar Jackson is back, the entire complexion of this team changes for sure. And when I look at the Sims today, I ran it. What was it? 25,000, a field of 25,000. And then I did 15% the first. I have two uniques here as well. For those of you guys wondering, and favored 150 lineups, just to smooth out our exposure a little bit more. Derrick Henry. Yeah, look, we're with the field on Derrick Henry at the flex. We're a little bit over at captain at 15%. I'm okay with that. I'm actually very okay with that, getting a little bit over on captain. As a matter of fact, Spags, here's a fun, here's a kind of a fun kind of thought exercise. If nothing else, with the way I kind of approach a guy like Derrick Henry, he is still very much like a boomer bust guy. Sure, he can give you 20 or whatever, but he still has that massive ability to boom. If he doesn't score, he could still give you 6. If I'm going to get overweight on Henry, I think I'd rather just do it at the captain spot.
Yeah, I think that's it. Because if you do think that he has a shot of being, the old version of Derrick Henry, or just the matchup makes him, particularly strong play, I think going to captain is the move. I do think that I said it out loud though as my first thing too. You're saying it here. I think maybe the chat will agree as well. I do wonder if people maybe overplay that angle, especially given the fact that we did just see him, have his first really good game in a while last week. The Buffalo game, first week of the year, great as well. But then it was silence last week. Back to being about a 20 fantasy point back. I think maybe he gets played appropriately captain, but ultimately for Derrick Henry, I think the main thing is if you're playing him in half your lineups, you're taking the shot that he's going to be the old guy or just going to be the matchup, befitting him so well. Half that lineup seems right. If you start playing him in a 2/3 of your lineups, I think you're underselling the passing game. I think you're underselling ways that he just doesn't get in the box or doesn't get in the box more than once, and he doesn't make a winning lineup at his price tag. But look, I was also saying the same thing about Rashee Rice on Monday, and he got fed incredibly well, got there late. That's still a good matchup. It's just it's a lot for Derrick Henry. It's a lot for Derrick Henry at this stage, especially.
Yeah. The week before that, even against the Rams, though, the fact that he had 24 for 122, averaged over 5 yards per attempt, he just didn't score. But he had, dude, you want to talk about falling down? I'll give you that. Multiple attempts at the goal line for Derrick Henry and didn't get in that game. That was, now the Rams have a good front for sure, but that was a little bit concerning. What do you make of Devon Achane here and the way they're using the rest of the backfield? Now, oh, and by the way, how could I forget? If you guys don't mind, take a second to atone for your sins this fine morning and hit that thumbs up. Leave a comment down below if you're watching or listening after the fact, and subscribe to the channel. It's all free. It goes a long way for us. But, I look at Miami. I do it's called the perfect parlay video. I do it over on the OddsShopper channel, Spags. And of course, there's no such thing as a perfect parlay. It's nice little alliteration. It's a nice sounding name, right? Kind of like the perfect lineup we do here. But each week I'll give out a parlay. I'll give a ladder play out. I'll give a wild boosted play out at the end of the show. And I gave out Jalen Wright last week, which is hilarious because Jalen Wright, you had Mike McDaniel saying that he had a great few weeks and he wanted to get him involved finally. Jalen Wright actually got some work. Now, how much of that was the ultimate result of garbage time? Probably a decent amount. But yeah, Ollie Gordon, who is taking some opportunities, Devon Achane, who I don't know if they fully trust this guy as a goal line back, where you've seen old Ollie Gordon get opportunities there before. Achane, though, still 25 touches last game. So with all of everything I just said, this guy, they're still feeding him the ball. It appears that the trade rumors are starting to get a little more quiet than they were earlier in the month with Devon Achane. Do you agree with the exposure we're getting to with him being our most exposed captain?
Yeah, honestly, I feel a little more comfortable with Achane than I do Derrick Henry, just relative to what I think the field will own these guys. Like Achane, projected for 60% ownership overall. The sim, I'm getting him 10% more in the flex. At captain, getting him 6% more in the field, getting 19% exposure. What the field expected to be at 13. I like those numbers. I think for Achane, especially on PPR sites, like if you're playing on FanDuel, I think maybe you want to critique that a little bit more, sure. But he's so involved. I mean, he's getting basically the same amount of targets per game as Jalen Waddle, and Waddle's numbers moving up since Tyreek has went out, but still 6.3 a game for both. And Achane's red zone role, like you mentioned, is not as good, even as Derrick Henry's. Henry's getting 3.1 a game, Achane getting 2.8 intended red zone touches. I think that's the least secure part, but the PPR upside balances out enough. I think he's got big upside here. I also wasn't sold Baltimore's defense was fixed last week, even though sort of the Vegas totals said that. Now with Miami being implied for 22, I think it kind of we're back to Baltimore's defense being more towards at least the middle of the pack, if not kind of bad. So I think Achane benefits from all that. So I'm happy to play him today. I certainly get people maybe wanting Derrick Henry more relative to matchup, but Achane's been really good, and I think people kind of sleep on that a little bit.
I'm glad you said that about Baltimore's defense, though, because that's how I view it as well. Not that the problem is that people overreact to everything. And then you get these situations. Oh, my mic got messed up here. Hold on. Where the hell does that go? All right. People overreact to stuff. And, you see the Houston Texans game where Houston just annihilated them. But, I mean, Madubuike was out, but it wasn't just him. It was Marlon Humphrey. It was Kyle Hamilton. It was who else? There were other guys who were out too. I think, Roquan Smith was out. Awuzie was out. They were missing like almost the entire defense, man. So it's probably somewhere in the middle, right? They're not the 03 Ravens defense, but they're also not the same garbage defense that we saw for a couple straight weeks where they were dealing with, myriad injuries. And I think coming off of the bye last week and now, this week, they're only 1 week removed from the bye. They're probably a middle of the road defense. And I think that's a reasonable way to look at them.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would say numerically if you look at the entire season-long sample size, they would look more like Miami than you would think is possible, where two secondaries that aren't very good, two teams giving up plus EPAs in the run game. And Baltimore's actually been worse defensively versus the run, a 0.06 EPA per rush allowed, about 3 times as bad as 0.02 that Miami's given up. But that should stabilize a little bit more for Miami. I just don't see, despite the results we got last week, that being something they achieve every week. But for Achane, I don't even know that it matters. If Baltimore's defense is really good, I think he could still PPR scam his way there. If Baltimore's defense is bad, he might have some explosive plays. He might have the really big upside there in the run game and the pass game. So, I'm just team Achane in general this year. Wish I had taken him more than Derrick Henry is to tie all the things together for me.
Dalton asks, so with football math, why did the Rams only put up 17 against the same defense? Well, first of all, football is football. You can't play that game of week over week. That can be a problem. But also, Puka Nacua in that game, right? Hurt early against Baltimore?
Yeah, he was hurt in the second quarter.
Yeah. but still, I really, Dalton, I don't like to look at things like that. There are, you could take any team in the league and you're going to find some weird like outlier games throughout the course of a season. It's just the way it goes. Caleb, what would you rank your captain order in terms of exposure? Who would be your number one choice? Second, how would you rank your options? Great question. All right, so let's do top four here, Spags, if we can. I don't mind throwing them out there first, and then we can throw in we'll both throw in a contrarian option as well. I'm gonna go. I'm going actually Lamar number one. Lamar, Achane, Henry. I hope to have double digits of all of those guys, and then probably Waddle over Flowers, because I still think this is a concentrated offense. And as you pointed out, Baltimore's defense probably middle of the road, probably still beatable. Miami did figure some stuff out on offense last week. I was reading something about them playing, I think, 15 snaps with 6 offensive linemen and really helping that offense function. I'll go Waddle number 4. I kind of like that.
Yeah, in terms of the sim ownership, I am getting nobody above 20%, but I am getting HN the most, just shy of 20. Zay Flowers, 15, which is flat with the field. Surprised to see the sim giving me less Lamar with 25% to first. But I'm only getting 15% Lamar, still third highest owned captain. But the field's at 23. And weird to see a slate potentially where Lamar is not mega chalk a captain, because I feel like every showdown slate, he's usually 25 to 33. Maybe still gets there because of just how these slates go. Derrick Henry, I got a number 4. Low on 1. I'm with Einsteinium in the chat. I think Mark Andrews kind of interesting. He's not getting a ton of targets as an inline tight end, but Miami has really gotten incredible production, or given up incredible production to tight ends. 0.76 EPA allowed, one of the worst marks in the league to tight ends. 16% target rate to tight ends, also one of the highest marks in the league. It could benefit Isaiah Likely as much. It's one thing to keep in mind if you do kind of try to isolate defensive splits down to a position, is like, yeah, Mark Andrews benefits, but Isaiah Likely is playing the exact same amount of snaps as him. So if he gets a target from there, he could do something and just score a touchdown, and that sort of represents same success. But I think the tight ends in general for Baltimore, like, I like playing the pass game, because Derrick Henry, I'll have lineups with him, but just play the pass game and you still capture that total. And I think the pass game looks a little bit underplayed.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I like Isaiah Likely too. Not sure how much I'd want to get to him at captain, but Isaiah Likely is one of those few guys, as not even to say he's a backup tight end would be, disingenuous, because he's not. He's going to get a lot of opportunities. It was only 2 weeks ago, or let's say 3 weeks, because they were on a bye. No, actually week 6. He played 81% of snaps. Like they will still use Isaiah Likely. Him and Mark Andrews split snaps last time out. Likely will run quite a few routes. Like, let's see, last week, unless you already have it pulled up.
They both played, I believe, 36 last week, or basically the same number.
Andrews and Isaiah Likely ran one more route than Mark Andrews.
Yeah, and the week before, Likely played 63 snaps, I believe. 63 snaps, Andrews played 61. So they're both playing the dead even amount of snaps. Likely's not getting targeted at all. Only a 4.7% target rate so far, which, just as much as he's on the field, I would think that's going to increase. I'm actually 6.7%. So still not good, but a little bit higher. Andrews at 22. Like, that's going to get closer. I think Likely's a really nice play on the slate. I would.
Did I lose Spags, or did Spags lose me? You guys let me know. Did I lose Spags, or did Spags lose me? Anyone? Spags lost me. Okay, thank you. Okay. EMAC, why would you say that? That's incorrect. Spags did not lose me. I lost Spags. Mark Andrews. All right. Anyway, we'll get back to this. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. he shall return. He was having StreamYard issues this morning. Surprise, surprise. But Mark Andrews has run 43 routes over the last 2 games. He seamlessly shift back into things here. 49 for Likely. Are you guys or end the pictures? They'll get back to you, dude. It does not take a long time. It'll certainly be before tonight's games and everything. Where are you guys at on Isaiah Likely? Because to me, I see a guy who hasn't been targeted much, but he hasn't even played with Lamar yet, right? Like, I think he played 1 game with Lamar, but at the same time, that was the game where Lamar got hurt. So and it was also Isaiah Likely's first time back in a while. So to me, I don't really think you don't have really anything to go off of outside of last season, where we saw multiple games where Isaiah Likely, it's unfair to say the focal point, but actually got a lot of work in the passing game. So with Isaiah Likely back, this is a spot that at his price point, I mean, okay, Donnie says I'm unlikely to use Likely. I see what you did there. Perfectly reasonable, no doubt about it. Fine. However, there's one thing we cannot ignore with Isaiah Likely, and there's not a single one of you in the chat or listening after the fact or listening in podcast that's going to disagree with this. That Isaiah Likely, for the amount of time he's on the field and for the amount of routes that this guy is running, there is simply no reason he should be $2,000. This is a silly price point. It is a mispricing on DraftKings. There's no arguing that at all. There is absolutely no reason that Isaiah Likely should be the same price as Charlie Kohler, okay? There's no reason that he should be less expensive than Tanner Connor. No, he just shouldn't. I mean, Tylan Wallace is $1,000 more expensive than Isaiah Likely, and this guy is going to play at best 5 snaps today, right? Think about that for a second. All of these guys ahead of Isaiah Likely, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, he's another one, right? Isaiah Likely on this slate should be reasonable price point in the flex, $4,000. $4,000, but he's $2,000. So there's that. And I think you have to consider Isaiah Likely. I like that we're getting 30% of him in the flex today. I don't even hate that we're getting, a little bit of him in the captain spot. Common pennies. If you are playing any 150 max, it'd be against your better judgment to not play some Likely. Crazy athletic tight end who could go for 40. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You don't have to look, you guys can do whatever the hell you want. You guys, you know that. All I'm saying is $2,000 is a pretty egregious mispricing on a guy that is going to be on the field a lot. Yeah, hustle. That's where I'd put him at. If Westbrook-Ikhine and even DeAndre Hopkins for that matter at 4,200, Ollie Gordon at 4,400, Malik Washington at 4,800, Isaiah Likely, you could almost argue that he should be above that range. But then you'd have to put him at the same place. Oh, there he is. Hey, there we go. Then you'd have to put him at the same price as Mark Andrews, but I wouldn't do that. Go ahead.
Is it pouring near you, by the way? Because we are in not dissimilar areas. Okay, so pouring here, power got knocked out for a second, but it was like a flash one. So just, actually not StreamYard, Loughy, just for what it's worth. But
yeah, okay. StreamYard, we apologize for once. I was actually recording a video for tonight's game, the betting video that goes on the OddsShopper channel. And as I'm recording, I'm halfway through it. I start to get the flicker, but fortunately it never fully went out. So heavy rain. I expect to potentially lose power as well. Spags, I was just saying while you were gone, Isaiah Likely, you don't even have to like him today or love him today, but there's no arguing at $2,000. It's the biggest mispricing on the entire slate.
Yeah, he's out there a lot. I mean, the fact that right now he's playing as many snaps as Mark Andrews, not that Andrews has been a world beater or anything, but like he's priced, at a very appropriate price tag for Andrews at $5K. For Likely to be, less than half of that, I think does stand out. And really, it's one of those things too. I mean, I mentioned Utica, I think does a great stream every week with my pal Pete Overzet, one of the top DFS players. He often points out, I think really feels like every week when he does those streams, but pointing out like that people just miss that guys get back to find their depth at some point. Isaiah Likely is just not a guy who's a 7% your target route run rate guy. Like, he does have upside. He spiked so big last year that people thought you would need him to win in fantasy football after week 1. He'll play better. He's just not playing well right now, or not getting targeted at the very least right now.
Einsteinium said, so Loughy, why consider likely at 25% when you can go down to 1K and play right? Well, first of all, Einstein, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. But the other thing is, Jalen Wright might not get on the field today. There's a very big difference there. You know, Wright might see a couple of opportunities, but they're 7.5-point dogs. You know, he hasn't seen he's seen one target all year long, and that was last week. He's literally stepped on the field, I think, only once all week or all year, maybe twice. So the big difference there is that, yeah, while Likely is getting ownership at 25% and Jalen Wright isn't, one, it doesn't mean you can't fire some shots in large field tournaments on Jalen Wright, but he's still the number 3 in that offense behind not only Devon Achane, but also Ollie Gordon, and he doesn't have a single red zone touch all season long. Isaiah Likely was, as Spags pointed out, maybe not a feature piece in the offense, but a pretty integral role all of last season. And he's a very talented pass catcher who could legitimately play 80+% of snaps in any given game. So they're just wildly different players from an opportunity standpoint.
And also, you know, Jalen Wright has played the last 2 weeks, like Loughy mentioned, and he's played less snaps in those 2 weeks, 9 the week before last, 11 last week. He's played less than Isaiah Likely did just last week. So, like, not that that's a one-to-one comparison, but you want guys around the field, and Jalen Wright is the 3rd guy on the field right now. And even if he plays well, like, you still want to target the guys generally who actually are out there running routes, doing stuff, and, you know, just playing.
Hey, if you're looking at like some of the cheaper guys, we talked about Likely, mentioned Jalen Wright, who I think, you know, maybe I sprinkle a tiny bit of him in. Greg Dulcich, the tight end position, man. The first time they started targeting a tight end again was Darren Waller. It feels like the first time they've targeted a tight end since, God,
Jonnu.
I don't know. Who was it? Mike Gesicki? Spag?
Yeah.
Like,
Jonnu was deeply involved last
Jonnu,
year.
that's right. I'm sorry. Jonnu, yeah. How could I forget about Jonnu?
The Durham Smythe years were lean, though. You are 100% right.
No, you're right. I just totally forgot about Jonnu's involvement. Very heavily involved before that trade to Pittsburgh. But there were times where this team just wouldn't look towards tight ends at all. And now you've got a few of these guys like Tanner Connor and Greg Dulcich. Is there a path here for Miami with any of these tight ends?
So Dulcich played 19 snaps last week. Tanner Connor, 31. Julian Hill's hurt, right? Is he hurt this week too already?
I'll tell you right now if he's in or out. Yeah,
he's on the projection set. He didn't play last week.
He's confirmed out, yeah.
Okay, so I'll take him out of my sheet. Yeah, I mean, neither guy I don't think is going to be a particularly special play, at least relative to what Darren Waller got. But obviously for Dulcich, there are some priors there, and he is super cheap. Sim-wise, he was coming up a little bit for me. I'm just trying to pull up Dulcich's numbers because I would be curious to see if they're even looking his way at all. So he's got no targets so far, it looks like, but he is running 7 routes a game, 19 snaps. Tanner Connor, 19 snaps per game as well, 11 routes. So right away, just the fact that we've seen any usage for Connor and none for Dulcich would think that he'd be the first tight end you'd want to play. But Dulcich is 600. I don't know. It just seems like a dog shit situation that could be, you might be right, like just back to Durham Smythe land, but they clearly like to target tight ends. So if one of them is good, they could get work. I just don't think it's occurred yet.
Right. It's just, we really haven't seen it unless they have a guy who's talented, right? And Dulcich was supposed to be that guy. And remember the hype around him in Denver?
Mm-hmm.
Greg Dulcich was hyped up, and then kind of just nothing ever happened. Yeah, Rance, Waller's on the IR with a pec injury, so that's not good. They really liked him, and you know what? He was doing exactly what they intended. Go out there, get like 4 or 5 targets a game, get open in the end zone. He had 4 touchdowns, dude, in the first 3 games he played. He was making some noise, but he's gone. Hustle says, if you're not playing 150 lineups, please stay away from Miami tight ends. I don't think it has to be that black and white, but I would agree that there are better value options out there. Now, who they are, hard to say. Also, this is a slate where you have an expensive Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Jalen Waddle. You are going to be paying up for some players for sure. You're going to need to find some type of discount. Was it Tylan Wallace last year in that primetime game that had that super long touchdown run reception down the sidelines? Do you remember that?
Yeah. He made it as captain in one of those games, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was the one, yeah. Because he had
I
two
had
touchdowns in that game too.
I'm pretty sure I had 0% Tylan Wallace that
Yeah.
game.
Well, why would you? I mean, even on a showdown, some plays were still too thin. I will say for Dulcich, I didn't realize he's coming up 30% for me in the sim. So 3x the field at 10%.
Wow, yeah.
I would level that out. I would get Tanner Connor at a similar amount. I just don't trust that Dulcich is anything at this point.
I don't either. I mean, I wonder if he has a prop, because you know what'll happen is if a prop comes out for a guy like Greg Dulcich, which it probably will later in the day, that exposure is going to come down. Spags. His projection is going to come down. Exposure is going to come down. That's just going to happen for sure. What about the other wide receivers for Baltimore? This is always such a gross spot because you've got now Bateman. I think Bateman's always in play. Bateman has 2 touchdown upside. You know, they love looking to him on deep. Lamar loves looking to him on deep balls for sure. He's probably it's not even fair to say a little expensive. 6,400 is reasonable on this offense. We're actually almost 2x the field in the captain spot, or I'm sorry, in the flex spot on Rashad Bateman as well, which is pretty nice. We're 2x in ownership at captain, but that's 2% to 1%. I'm a big Bateman fan on showdown slates just because he can blank you, or he can have a really nice, like 4 for 70 and a touchdown game, which goes a long way at his price point. Feel free to talk about all of these guys. We already talked about the tight end position, but what do you do when you start getting into like the DeAndre Hopkins land, you know, and the Tylan Wallace and Devonta? I mean, Walker hasn't played a snap since week 4. It's more so like the Wallace and the Hopkins type range that I'm worried about.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you could get to Zay Flowers, I'd prefer to do that by a wide margin because he's really distanced himself, from the tight ends, from the other receivers as a wide receiver 1, getting 7.9 targets a game, a 27% target per out run. The closest guy to that is Mark Andrews at 21.9%. Every other receiver under 20. So, Zay Flowers is your alpha, even though he doesn't feel like it sometimes. The red zone role for him kind of remains awful, only 0.4 targets a game there. So that's where he loses some of that equity because the touchdowns can really flow anywhere on this team. For Zay Flowers, the PPR upside versus Miami, a team that I just think should be awful in the secondary. If any QB could have gotten the ball where it had to go last week, I think it would have been a much better result going against them. For Atlanta, I'm still team Zay Flowers the most, but he's the most expensive, so not a brave take there. I'm with you on Bateman conceptually. I liked him so much coming into the year. The role is just kind of evaporated for him in a way that's not the most helpful. I mean, he's still running 22 routes per game, which is not that far behind Zay Flowers at 29, and he is ahead of DeAndre Hopkins at 19 per game. But he's not getting targeted that much, only a 16% target per out run. Red zone work was higher for him last year. He's only getting 0.3 red zone targets a game. And Hopkins has been better, versus man. So he's getting more separation. I think actually, according to PFF, Hopkins has been one of the most high separation receivers in the league when getting targeted, which is crazy, but it's probably just because of scheme and stuff like that. I would make the case that Hopkins has been better. I still have a candle on for Bateman, though. I think getting him 5% of captain's what I got. 2x the field and the flex as well. That's enough for me. It's not like a Bateman slate, but I don't want to be under on him because, like you mentioned, like he still has a ceiling. It's weird, man. They paid him in the offseason and now they don't use him. And it's almost like they paid him to keep him quiet so they could use Hopkins and other assholes more and not actually contribute to his growth in any way.
That's how I see it, though, too. I don't plan on having my slate dictated by Rashad Bateman. But if I told you also, Spags, he was going to be like 9-10% at flex and you got 20, I don't think you're going to complain about that, because he still does. Yeah, and you're not getting all of that much for sure. DC said every showdown slate with Bateman, I just click, with Baltimore, I just click Bateman. I can't help it. Yeah, I hear you. I'm the same way. I want to get some of him. He's still going to be on the field. Zay Flowers is clearly the top option here. Same with Derrick Henry. Would you consider Justice? God, there's so many, there's so many, to use my favorite word here, tertiary options in this Baltimore offense, man. Like, it's not just Bateman or Likely. You also have a guy like Keaton Mitchell, who has big play upside, but might only touch the ball twice. He's $1,400. I think Likely is still a much better play than Keaton Mitchell there. But given Miami's struggles in the run defense, does Keaton Mitchell make any sense? Do we consider Justice Hill in a spot like this, who has been instrumental in showdown slates in the past? I mean, it's so tough, man. It's really, really tough. The only thing I want to point out about Justice Hill, and I'm sure you've noticed this as well, you look at his targets, and he still has games with 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 6 targets. None last game, but there's always a possibility there. Now, how much of that is when they're playing from behind? I think that's a pretty legitimate question, right? When you're playing from behind, Justice Hill tends to get more work in the passing game. And we saw that against the Rams, against Kansas City, against Detroit, all of those spots. But he's still there. Like, Justice Hill is still there. He's still in the offense. He's still going to be on the field around, 30 to 50% of the time, depending on what way the game goes. You can't just ignore him. You can't just wipe him off the slate, Spags.
No, and I think part of the reason he's been really important is that Lamar keeps putting the Ravens in disadvantageous spots because he keeps taking sacks. Lamar is seeing pressure on 41.2% of dropbacks. That is the highest of anybody playing on a week that's not in a bye this week. He's also seeing sacks on 8.4% of his dropbacks. And today, for Miami, there are many flaws. They're not great at blitzing, but they do blitz at a 31% rate. They get pressure, a league average 20.5% rate. They hurry the QB a little bit more than average at 7%. I think what's possible, and this is one way that Derrick Henry, who could end up being very chalky today if people chase the results and think the match was really soft. If they get in the 3rd and longs, it's Justice Hill's time. Like, that's when he'll be out there a good amount. He's getting 3.8 targets a game. Overall, 24.5% target per run would technically be your second highest targeted receiver on Baltimore behind Zay Flowers. I think Justice Hill makes a lot of sense, and he's been playing as well as he can. Like, he's not playing well like Derrick Henry is, but a little more efficient overall. And in the pass game, he just has a role, much like Derrick Henry does in the run game. So I'm with you. I think Justice Hill is one way to get unique on the slate. And also, he could hit alongside Derrick Henry if that outcome occurs. Like, it'll be different situations if they score touchdowns, or, just Lamar could put him in danger with the playground ball that he's been doing, that I think has been running bad for the most part before he got hurt.
Right. And Steven, it's a perfect kind of segue into Steven's question. One thing I wonder about today, Lamar coming back in his first game, do we think he'll want to or even need to run? I don't think you bring him back here if he's not planning on running. I mean, I think they brought him back. They could have brought him back, it seems like, on Sunday, but they decided not to. I don't know, Spags, maybe this is just like rose-colored glasses type thinking, but why would you wait to play him to today, knowing that you had a short week coming up against Miami, if he wasn't back to 100%? Like, because those hamstring injuries, if you're not fully back, you can re-aggravate them very quickly. It's just, I don't want to read into this too much is what I'm saying, because whenever I do something like that and I'm like, man, I don't think Trevor Lawrence will run because his ankle's broken and he has two broken toes on his other foot. He goes and runs for 40 yards on the first drive. It's one of those weird things I try not to get too involved with.
Yeah. I mean, for him, Lamar, and I think this might be part of why the projection, I mean, he still has a good projection, but the projection to me feels a little bit light at 23.3 compared to what I would expect of Lamar in this kind of matchup with a 29.3 implied total. He's only running 5.3 times a game, and that does include him being banged up the last full game that he played. So it is a little bit of a decrease in rushing volume compared to like the 8 or so he's gotten for the most part last year. So I know, like, he's running a little bit less already. Maybe the injury would compound that, but he could also just come out and be like, he could have been watching film for the last 3 weeks ago, and the thing I'm not doing enough is running, especially when he's seeing so much pressure as he does. It could easily go the other way. So I'm with you. I don't feel comfortable making an indoctrination one way or the other, but you could point out that he's running a little bit less overall this year.
No, I think that's a great point. I just don't think it had anything to do with the hamstring injury. You know, like also if they were 7.5-point dogs here, I bet his rushing line is higher. So week 1, his line was 47.5 against Buffalo. Week 2, 47.5. Week 3, 43.5. Week 4, 40.5. But this week, 37.5 in some spots. To me, this speaks more about the fact that Lamar has just been rushing less and they're 7.5-point favorites. To see that number trend down every week it speaks more towards what you're saying than it just being an injury thing.
I mean, it was weird because last offseason, they talked about how Lamar has more control over the offense. He can do his own stuff. And that really worked well last year with him kind of audibling the plays more, that were passes, things that he wanted to run. And I think we're seeing the same thing this year. I just think it's running bad for him. I think that he was kind of, and this is more of an eye test than as a data thing, but it does back out with the fact that he's seeing a lot of pressure this year. It's just converting to sacks. There were so many times last year he would dance 10 yards backwards and he would avoid the sack and make the big play downfield to work out. This year, he's just been running bad on that. And I guess you can make the case that maybe he's due to run better on it. And that's going to lead to him rushing more and all of that. But I just think he has too much control and he's in love with his arm a little bit too much. Not to make the old critiques of him, but that's my sense from watching him, even though the data, you could still argue he's just going to get better at some point.
Yeah. And you know what else? He's only played 3.5 games.
Right.
He might just come out and start running like crazy and you go, oh, there he is. JB Yankees, I'm playing Huntley at captain. I don't think Lamar is 100% yet. Yeah, don't do that. No, really, don't do that.
No.
I mean,
that's crazy.
All, you would be paying more for Huntley at the captain spot than you would be paying for Zay Flowers. That's, dude. Maybe he's just messing around. I won't spend too much time on his bags, but
I would hope so, because I know, again, we Loughy, you do these streams every week. We do them together. I do them on my own channel. You sometimes get crazy questions about that, or people galaxy braining, and it really is important. Number one, plug for the link join, sign up for a Sportsbook, get the Sims for free. Just understanding how Sims work, you will never get Tyler Huntley to come up in a lineup, even in the flex, because he's not likely to play. If Lamar gets hurt, there's a guy named The Siege who used to do this strategy, and it never fucking worked because the QB doesn't actually play enough when they come in. Right. Don't play backup QBs ever on a showdown.
Not only do they not play enough, but they still have to be good.
Right.
And you're paying Tyler Huntley's starter value. You're paying you're paying a price point as if Tyler Huntley was starting this game. So, yeah. Alan Roberts, do you think they give it to Henry more so Lamar doesn't run a lot? No, I think they're just going to give it to Henry a lot regardless. Unless this game goes sideways quick, anything's possible, and Miami just scores twice, 3 times out of the gate, then yeah, but that's different. Goody, thank you for the super chat, brother. Eskridge is showing up in 15% in flex with 3 uniques and 20 favorited. What's his routes run per game? Flat minimum on DraftKings. Well, last week, and I want to pull up his snaps first, but if Spags has routes, he can give that to you as well. I can pull both up. D. Eskridge played 1 snap last week. Prior to that, he played 20% and 29%, so 12 and 17. Cedric Wilson, essentially, who hadn't played all year, took all of D. Eskridge's snaps last week. So to me, looking at that, I would say, hold on a second. Let me see something here. So was Cedric Wilson just inactive in all of these games? Yeah. Okay. So he had a knee injury. He missed early part of the season. Then he was off the injury report and was coach's decision inactive 2 straight weeks, Spags. But then last week played 32% of snaps and took essentially everything away from D. Eskridge. So the way I see this, unless you see it differently, I'm missing something. I would be more interested in going to Cedric Wilson than D. Eskridge, because last week suggests D. Eskridge may just not be involved.
Yeah, I don't mind that interpretation. I mean, I see D. Eskridge. I had to update here because he's Dwayne Eskridge in some data and D. Eskridge in others, which is always helpful when they change that 5 years into the league. But Cedric Wilson getting targeted 12.5% of the time. He's running a route at 8 routes per game. D. Eskridge getting targeted 17% of the time that he's running a route at 7 routes per game. I agree that it seems like Eskridge may be moving down in the pecking order and Wilson up. Because whenever you go see a guy go to 1 after being at 17 the week before, it's not really a good thing. But, like it is a week-to-week thing. Like, would it shock you if they ping pong back? The reality is you shouldn't play a lot of either. But if you want to play Eskridge 15% like the sim is giving you, maybe cut that and take 7.5% Wilson, 7.5% Eskridge. Because like those guys to me, like one isn't a better play than the other. It just comes down to whatever the coaches play. And even then, they have a very slim shot of hitting enough for you to make a winning lineup anyway.
Yeah, that's going to be difficult no matter how you view it. As we get more bets up too, I'll be posting a lot of stuff over on Tails today. If you guys are over there, I mentioned to you throughout the week, I hope you're loving it. Yeah, I hope you're tailing this year. We've had a profitable NFL season and we're doing it in a fun way, right? We're grabbing some ladders, boosting these parlays, doing a lot of stuff, but also grinding out some straight bets, some sides and all of that. That's the way to do it. That's the way to have fun and still be profitable. So I hope it's helped you guys, not just me, but everybody else that's on there. You look at the leaderboard, some of those guys are killing it. I say myself personally, just because I'm the one talking right now. But if you guys have loved the app and you're liking what's over there, we're never going to ask you to pay us. All of that information, all of those bets on the free picks page are always going to be free. The leaderboards, the AI mapping, all of that's always going to be free. But if you have a couple minutes throughout the day, what you could do for us that goes a really long way is go onto the Tails app, right? Or go into the App Store, or if you're in the Google Play Store, and just leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Really, really helpful. And I know we have an awesome community around here. So I know many of you guys have already done it, and we're appreciative for that. But if you have a minute, and you think this content, Spags, myself doing DFS content, maybe the tools or whatever, but also on Tails has helped you, hit us with a review on that Tails app. It goes a long way. I appreciate you for it. And Clayton says, I paid my bills, my electric bill using Tails this month. See, look at that. And we're just sweating free bets over there. Alan Roberts, Tails is awesome. Even getting a few picks for my underdog that's available in Mrs. Hell yeah. So yeah, appreciate it. And of course, come follow me and everybody else. Links in the description for Tails, or just download the app. Simplest way to do it. Type Tails in. What is the health of the Ravens D line? I don't know, Spags. Outside of Matabuka, who we knew was out, I think they're fine, right? Outside of the guys who were already out.
Yeah, as far as I know, I mean, it's not something I track super intensely as we talk about every week, because I think the Vegas total covers it well enough. But yeah, as we mentioned, pretty much everybody in that roster they're expecting back, besides the guys who are going to be out for a longer period of time, or a longer term rather period, everybody's back. So I mean, that's part of why their totals are started leveling out the last 2 weeks.
Let's take a look at some lineups here. Also, I want to ask you while I do this and set this up, are you interested in guys like Ollie Gordon? Or, I mean, we talked about Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill, but any interest here in Ollie Gordon, who actually scored on a showdown slate on Thursday night against, or maybe Monday, I can't remember, but against the Buffalo Bills last month.
Yeah, Ollie Gordon, I mean, the role seems to be technically played the most snaps he's played this year, last week with 21. But the role seems to be solid, though maybe not as urgent as it was about like maybe a month and a half ago, where it felt like they were giving him the entire red zone role. Now it's leveled out where Achan's at least leading that. But Gordon comes in a decent amount. But he's only coming up for me in 2% of lineups. I think the price tag at 4,400, a little bit aggressive. And obviously the total doesn't really support Miami. You're running away so much that the backup running back gets a lot of work. So I think Ollie Gordon a better play than a Jalen Wright. But I actually got guys pretty similar amounts, 4%, 5% for Jalen Wright. Obviously, Achan, that's where most of my Miami running back exposure will go to. But they seem fine. I think if you're not getting Achan, even maybe if you are, and things go a certain way for Miami.
So I'm looking at some of these lineups, man, and now it kind of makes sense why we get some guys like Greg Dulcich or D. Eskridge, even though I think that could change throughout the day as we, refine the projections. But it allows you to just get really nice lineups. Like, for example, look at this first lineup that we have. I'll try and zoom in a little bit more for you guys here. Zay Flowers, captain. You have Dulcich in there, dirt cheap. Likely, Waddle, Lamar, and Tua. That's a sick lineup. Zay Flowers, Devon Achane, Derrick Henry, Dolphins, Malik Washington, Ravens. Here's another one with Dulcich. But again, a good lineup. You have Flowers, Achane, Lamar, Malik, and Andrews. Here's an Achane captain with likely Lamar, Andrews, Westbrook, Akina, and Tua. So by putting one of those cheaper options in, it really does seem to open a lot up. Like, look at this one, Spags. Zay Flowers, and these are the highest Sim to ROI lineups in the Sims tools. Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, Greg Dulcich, Lamar Jackson, Ravens, Tyler Luke. These are good-looking lineups.
Yeah, and that one left a lot of money on the table too. Yeah, I get it. I do think when you see it coming up this much that the value plays, they're going to be owned a decent amount in the sim. Maybe you start to think about building slightly more balanced builds. But obviously, if your top ROI lineups are jamming everybody in, Zay captain too, coming up a good amount, more than I would have thought.
Man, you can kind of do what you want in a sense. Like this lineup, look at this. Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, DeAndre Hopkins, Isaiah Likely, Lamar Jackson, and Ravens. I mean, really, Isaiah Likely is the reason that we're allowed to do all of this stuff. It's not even Dulcich or Eskridge or those guys. It's a $2,000 Isaiah Likely. That's what opens everything up, man.
And that one's with 3 dupes, so that's a very high ROI for a dupe-heavy lineup.
That's a good point. Yeah. Anything else before we head out of here for the day? Fun show. I think we covered, there's so many players to talk about, but I think we hit on the important stuff. We'll have live before lock tonight once we have the inactives and everything. And once we have refined projections, we'll run the sims again. Make sure you're hanging out for that following NBA live before lock. But anything I missed here? Anything we missed that we didn't touch on?
Defenses. I mean, I feel like after what happened Monday night, where that first half, it was like you would shit on Commanders D so much, even though they were going to be low owned. And then they were the captain for a minute there until Mahomes found his depth a little bit, as water off does. I think the defenses here, they're coming up really not much at all. Whenever defenses don't come up, that's a time to at least consider them a little bit, even though neither looks good.
JK, I promise you, man, us talking up Isaiah Likely won't. He's going to be at that price point. You know, Spags and I could not exist, and Isaiah Likely would still be getting some ownership. I will say, man, I had the right read on that Chiefs game because I bet Chiefs. This is pregame. I bet Chiefs, and I threw this up on Tails as well. -4.5 second half spread. I never bet a second half spread before the game starts. Except this time I'm thinking Monday night, Dan Quinn gets the boys ready, and they come out and they compete for a half, Spags. But then what always happens when you have these super lopsided matchups, right? It's tale as old as time. They come out and they compete. It looks like the game is going to stay close. And then they go into the locker room at halftime, and Andy Reid goes, boys, what the fuck are we doing? Go out there and beat the piss out of them. That's exactly what happened. Like, they outscored them 21-0 in the second half. And it was 7-7, I think. 7-7 going into the tunnel at halftime. It always happens on those primetime games with the backup quarterback. You expect it to be a drubbing from the jump. A team kind of stands up, and then you look back on it and you go, okay, that ended exactly how it should have.
Yeah, and it ended up playing pretty close to what the total was anyway, even though it felt like it wasn't. You know, the one thing I will say that was sad was like Krosky Merritt still had no shot at getting there, even though like that was a perfect Krosky Merritt game script to get rolling downhill, and he is really one of the weirdest picks I could ever recall in an NFL season.
It has been a strange year from him, and such a polarizing player through no fault of his own.
Yeah,
right.
He just wants to be Bill.
What's that?
He just wants to be Bill. He wants a simple life, being Bill Krosky Merritt, and he's now become a lightning rod that I don't know if anybody really got right.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah, you didn't get him right. You didn't get him wrong. But I will say, if you projected him to be, well, no, because the Austin Eckler injury and all this stuff, it's so hard to say. Anyway, love you all. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Justin Sports, Loughy and Spags. Did I miss you guys talking about DraftKings robbing people this morning? It's funny because it was like 5 a.m. and I checked my balance to see how some of my late NBA bets did. And I was like, okay, not a bad day, about slightly above break even. And then I logged back in this morning and I'm like, wait a second, that's not right. What happened, Spags, was they didn't debit and grade winning bets as losses. They reopened bets and unsettled them. So like
Wow.
I still have all of these bets that were settled that reverted to unsettled, just hanging in the balance. But I'm not worried about that stuff. Dude, much larger thing, bigger fish to fry out there in the betting world than them just having some type of glitch.
Yeah, it's not going to be Black Monday for the $1 trillion
I don't think so.
publicly traded company. That's not how that works usually.
Anyway, thanks for hanging out as always. Guys, like I said, if you don't mind, hit us with a rating, 5-star preferably, and a review over on the Tails app. If you're a podcast listener to the Stokastic channel, do the same there in the podcast. And hit that thumbs up, subscribe right here on YouTube before you go. Have a great rest of the day, and we will see you back here for the next one. Remember, you can find Spags over on his channel and over on Twitter at Chris Spags, so be sure to do that as well. We'll see you back here soon. Bye-bye.